Hi,
Hey.
I'm Ben Sledge from The Gamer. Nice to meet you both.
You too.
My first question is for Rory. Hi, I'm Ben Sledge from The Gamer. Hi, I'm Ben Sledge from The Gamer. It's nice to meet the both of you.
You too.
Hi, I'm Ben Sledge from The Gamer. It's great to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you both.
Likewise, Ben. Good to be here.
I'm looking forward to the new season of The Rings of Power, of both of you. I've got some questions for each of you. You've played some iconic characters in your time, like I'm thinking Caliban, Macbeth, Iago. How does Tom Bombadil compare?
I mean, in terms of a part existing in people's imaginations and feeling like that you might be judged according to their imaginations, it's probably quite high up there. But in terms of the joy of playing these parts and what they offer you, again, it's got such open-endedness to it as a role. As a fun thing to try and interpret and to bring to life, it was a really fun challenge to do. Yeah.
Daniel, you might be playing an iconic character. We don't know.
You don't know.
No.
Do you not know who the character is?
I mean, you do.
Only me.
Great. You
Only
can tell me
me.
later. I think the great thing about him is that actually I'm playing this version of a being that has no backstory, doesn't remember any backstory yet, and so from that blank canvas start, all the experiences that I've gone through in season 1 have sort of layered up to where he is now. We're going to take him on now. He can speak a little bit. We're going to take him on and try and figure out whether as I think he thinks, he's got the tools he needs to find his purpose and possibly help Middle-earth, or maybe through his interaction with Tom Bombadil, he's going to realise he's hugely inequipped. He's got mountains to learn and not enough time to learn it in. I think it's going to get quite dark for him, and maybe the stranger will become an iconic character for people in the future. Maybe they'll talk about him. God, that's a stranger. Loved him.
You mentioned the darkness there, and in The Lord of the Rings, I always read Tom Bombadil as quite a light fellow singing his ditties and stuff like that. Are we in for a kind of grittier Tom this season?
Well, I guess he has been slightly transplanted in some ways from the story that he was involved with in The Lord of the Rings into what JD and Patrick see him and are using him in their version of the story. And obviously it is a period of great threat and darkness to the lives of everyone around him. So there is an importance to his role, and there is an awareness that much is imperiled, but because he has been around since the dawn of time, he has seen it all before. And whilst he knows there's a more virtuous path that could be taken, he's also aware that should the other path be taken, we go back into the cycle again. And so there is an enigmatic quality to him in that sense of being involved, but also because of his age and because of his awareness and wisdom, he's also looking down on things as well. I guess with a slightly sort of a deity-like quality to him.
Yeah, omniscience.
We were generally quite gritty because there was so much sand and wind. I mean, there's quite a lot of
Tenerife's very gritty where we were. Yeah,
yes,
very gritty.
yes, both in the eyes and the boots, slippers in my case.
Yeah, there's a big sandstorm as well.
Yeah. There's a lot of sand.
Very gritty.
Yeah, that did actually take months to get out of my eye. I ended up having to go to the Moorfields Eye Hospital when I came back to try and remove some of it, which was quite exciting in a way.
Exciting's one word for it.
Yeah, it was actually terrifying. Yeah, I was a bit squeamish about my eyes, but yeah.
Not now.
Not
They're
now,
not your eyes
not
anymore.
my eyes.
You mentioned it slightly there, Rory, in the first answer, but obviously these characters are based on Tolkien. How much room for your interpretation is there in these characters?
I sort of feel like, when you get the scripts, obviously the showrunners in the writing room, they give us scripts. They know where they need the arc to go for individual characters in order to make the whole story. We really can't control any of the other story other than our thread. And for me, the more we can the more I can embody that by, really locking my imaginative world, really listening to the characters and the brilliant actors that I'm able to work with, then that's gonna feed into the people like the showrunners, the editors, the people who work out how to finally tell the story and give them their overall arc. But I can't really get involved in that Uber thing, and it's probably not my job to actually. It's really my job to commit as far as I can, to give as much energy, to be present, in those scenes when we film them. And when you're working with great people, actually that's nourishing, fun, exciting, and hopefully it gives great results to people, who make the overall story.
You mentioned working with great actors there. Is there any actors working today you both would really like to work with who you haven't before?
That's a good question.
That's a very good question.
I once wore, on a film, I once got a piece of costume that still had Daniel Day-Lewis's name in it. And I was like, oh, wonder if they've washed it. I quite like getting that on there just to soak a bit of the
Method it.
I have been lucky to work with some of my sort of like childhood acting heroes. One that I haven't is Anthony Hopkins, probably, which I would like.
I'd love to work with Emily Blunt.
Great.
Yeah.
Done that.
Have you?
Yeah, done it.
How was it?
Yeah, fantastic.
Oh, cool.
Brilliant. I think that's all I have time for.
Brilliant.
But thank you both
nice
for
to
your
meet you.
time.
Thanks so
Yeah,
much.
Thank
lovely
you, man.
to meet you.
Cheers, nice to
Yeah.
meet you.
I've seen the first few episodes of the new season, and it's very exciting to see more of the dwarves. I love the dwarves.
Yeah.
But this season, Khazad-dûma's kind of fallen into disarray, and you've got some more emotional scenes, whereas, dwarves are known for their comedy often on screen. How was it to get your teeth stuck into some of these more emotional scenes?
Oh, I loved it, because I think the dwarves can be kind of pinned to the light relief, and we are the light relief in many ways, but there is also so much more to us, and there's so much more depth, I think, to the dwarves, and we're just so lucky that we get to uncover it, I think. And I think comedy lands best when there's true sensitivity behind it and around it. So I think it's wonderful that they get to kind of delve into that side, and we still have a few cheeky one-liners and looks from husband to wife here and there to keep it going, but we really get to dig deep into their heart and into their struggles this season, which has been a joy.
Yeah. I mean, we got to do that in season 1. We kind of, it did happen, but it's,
More this season.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just had to wonder, how much of yourselves do you put into these characters?
It's. I mean, that's a big question because you put yourself in every character. You do really all the knowledge and the experiences that you have to put yourself in that scenario. It's kind of slightly different with this because we look completely different to what we are. I'm sorry, I don't want to speak for you.
No, you're
but
right,
it's but yeah, you invest a lot of yourself when you put yourself in the role, and the days are quite big with the costumes and the prosthetics and all of that stuff. It really takes it out of you, basically. But yeah, I'm very proud of what we do, and the work that we've put into it. It's not just a case of learning your lines and turning up on the day. There's a lot of thought and depth and effort gone into it.
Does all the prosthetics and makeup and stuff make the emotional scenes harder?
I don't necessarily think so, but I don't know if they make them harder, but we're aware of them, I guess, or I'm aware of them. So you almost just have to turn up the heat a little bit and keep an eye on making sure that a performance is a lovely new skill that I think we've both learned in making sure that the performance reads. But I think as long as you're kind of, as with acting across the board, as long as it's all happening in here and you understand what the story is, I think, prosthetics and everything around us is just a support. The creative team is so brilliant in creating our surroundings, both on our bodies and off, as a support system rather than any kind of hindrance or something that we have to that's hard for us to then work through. They're just all buffers and hugs of support, I think, for our performances.
Yeah, it's great because on some of the emotional scenes, I mean, every scene is filled with emotion, but on the emotions where it's all released, then the makeup team and the prosthetics team that are great in knowing when to come in and when not to come in. Sometimes the performance and the emotion that's required for a take is more important than a piece of hair coming down here. Do you know what I mean? So sometimes it can get in the way because it's too distracting if you've just got a piece of hair going across your eye like this, and it kind of takes you out of it. But usually they've got the balance right on knowing when to step in and when not.
Great, yeah. I think I've got time for one more question.
Go on, lad.
piece of yourselves that isn't in the performance is your accents. I would have loved like a Welsh dwarf, for instance, an English dwarf. But why did you go for Scottish?
It's not our choice, to be
Right.
perfectly honest
Yes.
with you. It's not up to us. I actually did push for it to be Welsh because of Tolkien's connection to the Welsh language, and it's my first language as well, so I have a lot of pride in that. I would have loved that to have happened, but I'm not actually entirely sure why Scottish was the final answer. But I love the Scottish accent. It's the next best thing to Welsh.
Poor old Cockneys.
Yeah, that's it. Thank
Thanks
you very
so
much
much.
for your time.
Thank you,
Alright.
mate.
My first impression of season 2 from the first few episodes that I've seen is your two's chemistry is really great on screen.
Good.
What's the secret behind that? Is it a great off-screen, off-camera relationship?
It's just it's a relationship of great ease, I think,
Yeah.
and it's kind of mutual. We kind of let each other just do our thing on set and don't overanalyze, don't over talk about things. We kind of just do it.
Let it happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and have a laugh off screen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic. The relationship between Celebrimbor and Anatar is kind of toxic. It's built on lies.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
I feel like your motto this season is kind of gaslight, gatekeep, girl
yeah.
boss. You got the chance to explore the highs and presumably the lows of this relationship over the course of the season. How was that?
Yeah, it's been a really, really fun
It has.
experience, to be honest. Like, it has. It's so rich, everything that we've been afforded to play with, and the world that we're acting in is just the level of detail from all the departments is just like so vast that it just provides us with such inspiration. And our time on the set, we were incredibly lucky because we could film it chronologically. We were on the same set, so we were coming in, and it didn't feel rushed. And I think that was one of the biggest, things that we appreciated was the time that we were afforded to tell this story, because it's such an important story to us as well as a lot of fans.
Obviously, you mentioned the props and sets there, and we've got some beautiful rings last season and this season. Do you have any favourite props that you got to use and hold and craft?
All my tool, all the stuff that's around. Yeah, I love it. It's just lovely to have all that stuff, I mean, occasionally you go, what's this for? And they'll explain to you, oh God, I hadn't even thought of that, So everything's been selected very carefully. There was one prop that was slightly problematic, which is my Isildur dispenser, which was a bit wobbly. But other than that, it was fixed with a bit of glue and it was fine.
Yeah.
But I won't welcome the return of that particular prop.
I had the crown of Morgoth, which was very cool.
That's the best prop in the whole thing.
Yeah, and I get to do a lot of stuff with it, which is cool.
Yeah.
It's very powerful.
Is it heavy?
Yeah, the real one is heavy. The stunt one, not so much.
Okay.
The stunt one is when you're fighting with it, and
Oh, you fight with it, do you?
well, it's in the trailer.
Oh, yes.
The end of Celebrimbor's arc this season, I'm not giving away any spoilers, but from when I read The Silmarillion as a teenager, it was burned into my mind. How do you deal with the pressure of living up to fan expectations with these characters?
I don't look at it like that, I think because, talking personally, Celebrimbor is such a... he's sort of briefly glanced at by Tolkien. He's intrinsic and vital, but there aren't any, for example, descriptions, or there is one episode that I think you're referring to that is described. But other than that, I felt that I have plenty of breathing room to create my own vision for the character and the showrunner's vision and how they've written him. So I've never really, obviously I want people to be happy with the way we tell this very important story, and I think that they will be, because not only do we cover Tolkien's, do we honour his story, but we're filling in all kinds of really twisty-turny dark stuff in between. So it's not pressure, it's just excitement, the excitement of looking forward to sharing it. That's what I always feel with this whole show. Actually,
and with the bit that you're talking about, which we will not name, like that is I think everyone that has read this part of Tolkien is like so excited about that scene, and it's something that we didn't feel any pressure about, but were very aware of when we were filming this whole journey, I guess. And so we put. I'm really, really pleased with the journey, and that scene that happens at the end of episode 1 is really good.
Yeah. I know, it was a short season for me this year, but
Fantastic. That's all I've got time for. But thanks
Great
so
to meet
much.
you.
And I wanted to know a little bit about Isildur this season. You're stranded in Middle Earth, a long way from your family, everyone you know. What's in store for you this season?
Well, he wakes up in a spider cave and has to fight Shelob in his first sequence. So I think that sort of sets the sort of precedent for season 2 of Isildur. It's a story of survival. It's a story about learning who to trust. It's a story about personal growth, about just about surviving, really, and dealing with grief. He's been abandoned by his whole nation and by his father, so there's a lot to process there for him, and he does it in a way that I sort of connected to. I was admiring his sort of perseverance and his resilience to all those forces against him. So it was wonderful to play.
Yeah, you mentioned the fights. It's an action-packed start to the season.
Yeah.
You've got the Shelob fight. You fight some of Adar's rogues as well. How did the different fights compare when you're fighting, people in makeup versus presumably computer-generated spiders?
Well, in the Shelob sequence, there's also an orc. If you can remember, the first thing he has to fight is an orc. But orcs, the stunt guys in the prosthetics have zero peripheral vision, so it's actually quite dangerous because they're dressed in like these really like big costumes. They've got prosthetics on, and it's quite physical, and it's kind of dangerous. So there's a lot. Obviously, all the safety precautions are taken into consideration. But it was just a little bit more robust and physical. And then I think with people, it's just more. You have to be a lot more kind of quick and coordinated because you're a lot closer and you can do more. So I kind of like the spider cave, to be honest. I like being a bit more rough and tumble with it all, and that when there's not much space to work in, it's a bit more kind of, do you know what I mean, like physical in less of there's not as much space to work in.
Yeah, I get you. Is it challenging to play a character who fans might have a preconceived notion about from reading or watching The Lord of the Rings?
Yeah, I mean, I had a preconceived notion of who the character was, and I was like, oh wow, and then I had to sort of really kind of delve deep into the research and come up with my own interpretation of it. And in a way, we had to reverse engineer Isildur because we know where he ends up, but where does he start? Which is also a blessing in a way because we get to really build him up from the ground. So season 1 is a story about him sort of eager to leave and explore the world, and season 2 is one of him having to grow up and then desperately want to go home.
Yeah.
And it's just a story of personal growth for him, and he sort of hardens. All of the experiences in season 2 harden him, and he becomes a man and becomes more of a warrior that we kind of expect him to be in a way of when I was sort of approaching him. I was like, he's a warrior, and I was like, we get that now.
Yeah, completely. And you mentioned your research there. Is there anything in particular you took from the books or kept on set to keep you grounded in Tolkien's work?
Yeah, so I Tolkien was at the forefront of my research for him, but again, he doesn't really give us a lot. He gives us signposts of things that he does, and obviously I read the Silmarillion, I read the trilogy, and that was my starting point, but then I also wanted to know a bit more about Isildur's character, and I kind of looked a lot into Camus and the rebel, and I found that sort of, there was a quote I think by Camus, rebelliousness is a strange form of love, and I just liked how it doesn't necessarily, his darkness might actually be a positive thing in a way for him. Mm-hmm. He's longing to be loved. And I think instead of it being such a dark and negative thing, what he eventually does, I think it might come from a good place.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I've got time for one more question. So does this allow you some, you said Tolkien gave scant details. Does this allow you some freedom to interpret the character?
I think so. And I mean,
our show is an adaptation of Tolkien. It's our own interpretation of it. You know, everyone has their own interpretation of the trilogy. But I think what's important is to not forget that we're playing just human characters who have interactions with one another, and I'm playing a human, and they're inherently fallible as beings. So that's a fascinating thing to play. It's what are our motivations? What drives us? What's our environment? Where do we come from? And how does that impact us? And I think all of those things are what are brewing at the minute, and you know, it just ramps up season upon season, and I'm very excited to continue playing this character.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
My first question is about the last season, actually. What did you make of the reaction to it, and how did that affect your thought process going into season 2?
Well, it's gratifying to have such a fan base that we have in fans of Middle-earth and fans of Tolkien. And, you know, there's a lot of different thoughts and opinions and feelings that come whenever you're working with such a big property. And we see it all as just a token of people's love for Tolkien. And so, you know, we appreciate that people are so engaged with the material. In terms of how it affected us, we had finished writing season 2 before season 1 came out, so there wasn't really much opportunity there. But I'd say also, you know, we read, you know, criticism and read comments and thoughts, and couldn't say there's any one that sort of like spun the show in a different direction. But you know, it all gets sort of ground up, and then you know, who knows how it affects you as you're there at the keyboard at the reg room.
We are our own harshest critics, believe it or not. There's nothing anyone can say about the show that, you know, we or one of our closest collaborators hasn't already said of, oh, is this working? Or, you know, boy, I love that part. You know, positive or negative, you know, it's all sort of background noise to a certain extent. I will say that, you know, season 2, you know, differs in a couple ways from season 1. Season 1 was, you know, very much, you know, focused on Galadriel, the protagonist, you know, in this huge ensemble. You know, season 2 is focused on Sauron. This is his story. That means it's going to be darker from minute 1, and you know, maybe even go to even darker places than you're expecting by the end. But also, we as, you know, producers and writers have all the institutional knowledge we gained by making the first season in making this second season, and hopefully that pays off in all kinds of ways. In that maybe we're a little better at doing our jobs, and we know the show better than before, and you know, hopefully every episode is getting a little better than the last one, and every season better than the one before.
Great. In season 2, we're getting a lot of classic, iconic Tolkien creatures and characters. I'm thinking Ents, Shelob, Tom Bombadil, Na'vi. How do you decide what of Tolkien's world to pick? And you know, some of these are transplanted from where he's written about them.
Sure. I mean, it all starts with story in terms of what feels like the right thing for the story. I'll just go deeper in one of those, like Tom Bombadil. You know, we knew that the stranger was going to be having this coming-of-age story as he's going on this journey of self-discovery and figuring out what his powers are. How does he control them? Why is he supposed to? You know, what's he supposed to use them for? And as we said, who would be an apt person to guide him through that process? You know, who's the oldest, wisest person in Middle-earth? Well, Tom Bombadil, we know, is around during the Second Age and was here before the first raindrop and the first acorn. So if anyone could guide the stranger along this journey, we thought it would be him. So really that was just, you know, opportunity meets storytelling need. And we feel like it's the audiences are going to find it delightful.
In terms of Shelob, we have Isildur, who was believed dead and abandoned in Middle-earth, and now he's got to make his way out of Mordor. And we thought, what sort of obstacles might he face along the way? We know Shelob set up shop in Mordor at some point, and the idea of a young Isildur and a young Shelob crossing paths was, you know, too delightful to pass up.
Yeah, brilliant. We have a few casting changes this time around. How difficult was that to navigate? And did you consider recasting Charlie Vickers for the Anatar portions?
When you have somebody as talented and as delightful to work with as Charlie, why would you ever consider that?
Yeah.
You know, but you know, the performance he gives this season is incredible, and you know, I think it's a testament to his, you know, preparation and passion for the work and for the texts, the layers he's built into this character. I mean, really, in some ways, he's playing one character who plays multiple characters, and I think, you know, the nuances of that, especially as the season progresses, are really worth watching.
Yeah, definitely. He does a fantastic job.
Yeah.
I've got time for one more. So do you have any favourite moments of the season that you can talk about that you're really excited for?
Sure.
Sure. I think, you know, watch where it builds to. You know, the relationship between the Charlies, as we call them, Charlie Vickers and Charlie Edwards, Anatar and Celebrimbor, is harrowing. You know, they go from initially Sauron seduces him and then manipulates him and ultimately gaslights him into making the Rings of Power. But it leads to a place where they become these sort of close collaborators, and there's this weird, not quite bromance, but I think a relationship that can exist between people who are working to make something difficult together, and it ends in a place where you feel so much pathos for Celebrimbor, and I think perhaps one of my favorite scenes we shot this season is one of their final scenes together. So really looking forward for audiences to experience that.
Brilliant. I think that's all I have time for, but thank you.
Terrific. Nice seeing you.
I'm looking forward to the new season of The Rings of Power. Both of you. I've got some questions for each of you, and I'm going to go alphabetically, I think. So, Morpeth, last season we saw a very headstrong Galadriel, the kind of warrior leader that Tolkien described. But now she's been betrayed. She's had her heart broken almost. Has her attitude changed at all? And might we start to see the transformation of her into the character, the kind of more serene and wise character that we know from the Third Age?
Yeah, so in the first season, Galadriel had such certainty, and that's just all been completely shattered. And so I think she's trying to figure out who she kind of is and who she has to make sure she is, really, because she's also kind of been shown that she has this capacity to, first of all, get things wrong, but first of all, be drawn to the dark. So she's kind of learning anew kind of who she's going to be in this dark world that's starting to be created. And it must be weird to have to start anew, thousands of years old. It's a lot of habits to break. So it's really fun kind of going into playing her in a totally different space.
Yeah, conflicted almost, you'd say. Yeah. On a similar note, Sam, your early scenes in the series and some of the Adar's monologues from last season they seem to be trying to show a more human side to the orcs and get some sympathy from the viewers, including there's a little orc baby in rags in one scene. I must ask first, is there actually a prop orc baby in there, or is it just rags?
No, it was a real orc baby.
Amazing.
Was it? I can't remember.
It was myth.
I think it was a prop. I think it was made.
Yeah.
Prosthetics department. No props.
That's cool.
We didn't have a baby in prosthetics.
No, too long.
But yeah, Tolkien agonized over his career about orcs and whether they should be wholly evil. Is it challenging as an actor to get the audience to sympathize with, these creatures?
Well, I think it was best that if I didn't think about that as Sam too much, but Adar definitely believes that orcs aren't kind of these irredeemable monsters, and he believes that they are sentient beings and that they don't deserve to be used as cannon fodder and just treated like dirt, and so he wants them to be protected, and so he is their father, and he feels duty bound to protect them and to find a place for them or create a place for them, or that is a home and a safe place for them, which I think isn't that much to ask, really, is it? Come on now.
Yeah, exactly. It's quite heartwarming at times, which feels strange.
Yeah, well, it should be a difficult thing to.
Sam, you're playing a non-Tolkien character, a character Tolkien didn't write, and Morpeth, you're a kind of new interpretation of Galadriel that we don't see much, especially in the Lord of the Rings books. Do you have any strategies on set to ensure that your characters are authentic to Tolkien's work?
Yeah, we all just kind of listened to just the Silmarillion and kind of Lord of the Rings just constantly, because it's kind of what's amazing about what he wrote is that the world, it's so rich and detailed that kind of, even if you're having to discover who your character is within it, you know exactly the world in which you need to inhabit.
Yeah.
And something I find really useful in just kind of finding, trying to be like an authentic elf was just their kind of love of the earth and of the capacity for things to be beautiful and good. And that's something that I kind of kept with me, and that felt like a good anchor.
Yeah.
Which is also why the orcs make a big mess of the earth. Lots of burning, lots of chopping down of trees.
That is true.
Can't be doing that.
Can't deny that.
Yeah.
But, yeah, there is you know, there's so much humanity. You alluded to it before in Tolkien's work that it is, even as a non-Tolkien character, I think it's not such a huge leap to kind of imagine this other character within that world, and so it feels supported by his writing, and so you do imagine this new character quite easily within that world.
No, definitely, I agree, and I can't wait to see the pair of you either form an allegiance or butt heads or whatever is going to happen this season. Yeah. I think that's all I have time for. So thanks so much for chatting with me, and enjoy your days.
Are you North Walian?
No, I'm from Liverpool, but I grew up on the Wirral.
Okay, yeah.
I have just spent like a week in Wales, so maybe it's that.
Okay. Sounds so like my cousins, yeah.